Hello and welcome back to another session of Therapy and Panels. Today we're going to be talking about Tony Stark. Now Tony has faced many adversaries throughout his time as a hero, from interdimensional aliens to corporate espionage, name it. But for today's story, there's going to be one villain that he is going to have a hard time being able to take down. Alcoholism.
A 9-issue storyline in the Iron Man comics written in 1979 by David Michelinie and Bob Layton, and illustrated by John Romita Jr., Bob Layton, and Carmine Infantino. Demon in a Bottle is a concerned story with Tony Stark's alcoholism, showing us his more human side and his struggles with addiction.
A fun fact about this story is originally the story arc was called The Power of Iron Man, but Demon in a Bottle ended up winning for the much better name,
So let's suit up and get reading Iron Man, Demon in a Bottle.
I'm reading from a trade with a boring cover of Iron Man just standing there heroic-like, but the much more iconic cover for this story is a powerful one with Tony looking at himself in the mirror, looking terrible with the 5 o'clock shadow and all, and next to him is a big old bottle of booze he's been drinking. We open the story with Tony on an airplane ordering his third martini since the flight began, as he recalls learning about how S.H.I.E.L.D. has bought out enough shares of Stark International to almost have full control of the company, so they can gain the company's weaponry. During the flight, a military tank is hurled through the air and strikes the wing, sending it down.
And this is why I never go on airplanes.
Stark runs to the bathroom to don the Iron Man armor he carries in his briefcase. Times before the TSA, and knocking an old lady to the ground in doing so.
Hey, when nature calls, no one stands in your way.
He flies out of the plane and guides it to a safe landing in the ocean. Navy ships approach and soldiers help the passengers to safety and bring Iron Man to an island base where they tell him the tank was thrown by Namor, who was defending a man on the island that the soldiers have been removing toxic waste off of for years. Iron Man confronts and fights with Namor before it's revealed that the soldiers belong to the Roxxon Corporation, which has secretly been occupying the island, so they can mine for the vibranium that is on the island. Iron Man and Namor team up to fight and defeat the soldiers, who escape and trigger explosives contained on the island, destroying it along with any evidence that they were even there. While flying home, Iron Man's armor begins to malfunction, sending him flying uncontrollably through the sky and crash lands.
Never drink and fly, kids.
He regains control and later tests the armor in his lab and finds nothing wrong. Stark is visiting a casino with Bethany Kane when villains Blizzard, Melter, and Whiplash arrive and attempt to rob the casino's vault. Stark manages to don the armor and defeat the villains, but during the fight he overhears a comment about Blizzard saying that Hammer wants Iron Man kept alive, and Stark later receives a request for Iron Man to represent his company at a public ceremony, and he meets and greets with a foreign ambassador. At the ceremony, Iron Man's armor again starts to malfunction, striking the ambassador with a repulsor blast, killing him. Iron Man tries to tell the police about the malfunction, claiming he had no intention of killing the ambassador.
If I had $1 for every time I've heard that excuse as a cop.
Of course they don't really buy that excuse, but knowing they can't really fight him off, the police let him go, but they demand that Stark turn over his armor for inspection, which he complies with. And during this time, Stark's drinking increases significantly. Stark meets with the Avengers, agreeing to their request that Iron Man temporarily step down as their leader and asks for Captain America to train him in hand-to-hand combat.
He's using this as an excuse to beat Steve up for losing the leadership role.
He then meets with Scott Lang and asks him to sneak into the prison which is holding Whiplash to get information on this person named Hammer. And Stark uses the information to fly to Monaco with Rhodey to investigate. Hammer is alerted to their presence and sends soldiers to attack them, where they are both knocked unconscious, Stark being taken prisoner, and Rhodes is left in the public and arrested by the local police once he awakens. When Stark awakens, he is confronted by Justin Hammer, who reveals that he has been responsible for Iron Man's malfunctions. Angered that he lost a lucrative bid to Stark International, he hired a bunch of scientists to take control of Iron Man's armor, and forced him to kill the ambassador in an attempt to ruin the reputation of the company.
I feel like you could have done this in a way that didn't involve murder, but what the heck do I know? I make videos.
Stark attempts to escape Hammer's compound by climbing over the wall, but he sees that it is on a giant floating island at sea. When Hammer learns of his second escape, he orders a bunch of the villains he keeps in his employ to find him, but they only find Iron Man due to Stark managing to find the confiscated briefcase containing his spare suit.
No one bothered to look into the suitcase? I mean, it's Tony Stark. You'd think they would look in there. He would have something.
Iron Man battles and defeats all the villains and heads off to get Hammer when Rhodes has finally managed to convince the police of the story, and the island is attacked by police helicopters. Hammer manages to escape, but Iron Man manages to crash down onto the island and destroy it, causing it to sink. And Stark returns home to continue binge drinking, and one night drunkenly yells at Jarvis, who resigns the next day.
He could take the yelling. He could take much abuse, but the one thing that I bet that got him to quit was when he said that Alfred was a better butler than he was.
Continuing to drink to forget his problems, Stark ends up getting confronted by Beth, who tells him about her former husband, Alex, who became addicted to drugs to deal with stress and insecurities, which ended their relationship and eventually killed him. Beth admits that back then she didn't try to understand his insecurities, but now that she's older, she's not going to abandon Tony like she abandoned Alex, and tells Tony that he is becoming his own worst enemy and must open up to and let his friends help him. Otherwise, he'll keep drinking until it kills him.
And with that, it'll be up to you to figure out how Tony handles everything. But for my final diagnosis, this is a good read.
The art is always a plus when it comes to someone like John Romita Jr., but for this book, the points go all in for the story, for it does an excellent job with giving out the message it wants to give without it being a total focal point of the story. This is a story about Tony Stark having to take accountability for the actions, even as Iron Man and as Tony Stark, and showing the down spiral he goes through with all of his drinking, which is a perfect example of how this is a portrayal of how so many people suffer with alcoholism go through, mainly as a way to make the stress and pain go away, even for just a little bit. My favorite moment comes from Beth explaining her past with her husband's addictions, being too scared to help him, which involved his death, and she refuses to let it happen to Tony. It makes you realize that you need to have people like this in your life to help you, or else you're just going to end up getting yourself killed continuing on these paths.
And that is all the time we have for this session. I'd like to thank you all for attending another session of Therapy and Panels. If you liked the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I am the Super Guru, signing off.